Following on from the workshop we did last time, let's have a go at doing some mark making. But this time we're going to use some brushes. And I've chosen ones that you're probably likely to have in school. I should think most of you got something like this. This is just hog's hair brush, round, not very special. Another one you might have is a slightly pointed brush like this that's usually made of squirrel hair, or in this case nylon, which is preferable because it doesn't bend over, and you want to really keep it to a nice point. And then probably my favourite, which is this flat brush, sort of like a wedge or chisel shaped brush, which has got a very broad edge and a very narrow edge. Something else that I think is almost essential is to have a cloth. In this case it's a sponge which is damp, to keep the brushes dry, because we're going to use some water with our acrylic paint, which we've got here, but we don't want to use too much water, so the sponge is really helpful to keep the brushes dry. And also a piece of white cartridge paper and a small amount of water in a pot. So what I'm going to do first of all is just use one colour, because what we're interested in is the marks that these brushes will make. So I'm just going to put a small amount of paint on the plate and brush in the water, just a small amount to dilute the paint a bit, and then see what we can do. And you sort of find there's not an awful lot of control that you can get on a brush like this. It's okay if you just want to paint big areas, but not really very helpful if you want to paint something with a bit of detail. So although these are probably the most common brushes in school, they're not the brilliant ones, they're not the best. But you can still vary, try out different sorts of marks. You can dab, you can do lines, but the lines don't really vary very much, so as I said, it's not the best. Moving on to this one, which is the nylon pointed brush or squirrel hair brush, a little bit more versatile. You can use the point, and if you use the point very, very carefully, you can get quite a thin line, and if you vary the amount of pressure that you're putting on the page, you can get quite a variety of lines and marks. So I can go from light, touch, and of course we can do small marks. So much more versatile of a brush. We can also use it to put on washes, but nothing that's too big a wash, because a brush of this size doesn't really kind of carry enough paint. And then the third brush that I am going to be using is this one, our flat shaped brush, again very diluted paint, and you can see that it gives you quite a lot of difference in terms of direction, difference in terms of size, and if you dry the brush, you also can get what's often called dry brush technique, which is something that you can use in watercolours. So those are the sort of basic brush shapes, and by using them carefully and in different ways, you can vary quite a lot in terms of just the marks you make on the page or on the paper.